So,
Any other thoughts on that? Why they'd be performing higher with short text? I mean, that makes sense.
I think that there's more possibilities of drawing out text details to support whatever that inference is, whereas the multiple choice, there are the distractors there that my students will pick at a greater rate, let's say, than how they do on the short text.
Yeah, because the distractors are pretty close. I mean,
They're very
We're
close.
at the point of making them a little more ambiguous.
so then I have my kiddos that I'm still looking at with those two pieces of evidence. So then, again, we used open house as our next strategic plan, and we also had some great successes in there. Claim 1, target 1, giving an inference or conclusion, and that multiple choice, we had 95%. Target 2, identifying central idea, key events, we had 95%.
Multiple choice.
Multiple choice. Target 4, inference or provided conclusion and support with evidence in a short text response, 76%. Then target 7, that interpret figurative language, we had 95% in a multiple choice.
Really good data on both so far.
Yeah, we were really happy and surprised, not surprised, but just happy that they had made such growth so fast. So some of the things that I think have led to that success again is our ELA journal, note-taking, and then focusing in on question types this time. So our first go around with all the targets, we just talked about the targets. Like Diana said, what keywords might you see, what is the meaning of the target, and what are the question types that match. But for this go around, since we've gone through once, we're coming back, I've decided to focus on the question types within that, like I said. So for example, in target 2, central idea, in a summary, if I'm looking at a multiple select question, if I'm having to say what are the details that would belong in a summary, we know that it's going to be more than 1, it's going to be more than 2, so the likelihood that you're going to have 3 of those choices that you're going to have to choose in order to find a summary of a selection. So just focusing in on the question type in connection to the target.
And that's your DOK study as well.
So we talked about DOK, and on our DOK chart, we talked about the time that it should take in each one of those DOKs. If I'm in a DOK 1, it should only take me about 2, maybe 5 minutes. It's a quick, easy think through. But as we go through those DOKs, then we need to slow down and maybe take some more time. And then we matched up the question type with the target and in the DOK. They love it because then they look back there and they'll say 5 minutes, everybody needs to take 5 minutes, no more than 5 minutes.
So they're accessing it.
Yeah,
And that's new for you.
it's brand new.
Yeah.
We did DOK last time.
We did
Like,
DOK,
and
but
you
we
had the
didn't
time-
go that
Right.
depth
the time
into
and
what
the
it
question
was.
type. Yeah, it's nice.
Again, it could be that we are isolating targets, so you have the ability now on round 2 coming back
Absolutely.
to claim 1, target 2, to look deeply into the item type.
Well, it also held them accountable a little bit for being done.
Yes.
So if in 2 minutes we know we have a DOK 3 question, then we look back at there and say, do you think that's your best thinking?
Did
And
you
we'll
have
look
enough
back,
time to
right,
give your
have
best
you-
thinking?
Yeah.
So is that helping with endurance then too?
And then the second thing that I think we did, they were having a difficult time really defining what a key event was. And so we talked about the key event is those large events that are there to explicitly support the central idea. They aren't the intermittent details that kind of lead to more evidence or examples, but they're the main ideas that help us find out what the central idea is. So, because they were just writing every little detail that they could out of the book. And so by focusing on that, they were able to get that key detail correct.
With that, did you also have them apply that within their writing? As far
Not
as
yet.
looking at, okay.
Not yet, but it's a great idea because they are having difficulty with then going on to those evidence and examples based on their key.
So when Taj and I were looking, we were making some assumptions that you're using explicit instruction. So you're modeling.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then you're guiding, because you said, you described the process that you just told us, but you've modeled that and then you're guiding them.
Yeah, we went through the text and we looked at a sentence and we said, does this sentence give us or is it explicitly written for us to understand the central idea or main idea? Or is it just giving us more examples of what the person is wearing, or what they're thinking, or where they are? And so we went through the text and did that. And then the next one is that goal setting. So I showed them my strategic plan from last month before we went back and took our exit tasks and our check-ins. And I said, well, this is what I said. I said, we're gonna meet 70%, and I have to bring this back to my data team meeting, and I have to share with them, did we meet 70% or not? And that really motivated them to say, well, I want you to bring it back to that data team meeting and say, yes, we met it. So that was one of the things. We looked at,
We're really happy, and congratulations.
I mean, we looked at individual, but looking at it as a class, it also kind of helped them accountable to everybody to say that we need to work together to meet this goal. One of the fun things, and it was really interesting in making connections. So in finding the proof and of an answer choice, I always said you have to find proof, you have to find proof. I think about 6 or 7 kids had no idea what I was talking about.
Right.
So we talked about being a lawyer, and a lawyer has to go to court, and they have to have evidence and proof to prove their point. And Carmichael went, oh, that's what you mean. And so giving them some real life examples helped them understand what they were actually looking for, that they had to prove to their audience, me, that they understood what their text evidence was.
Yep, that's academic vocabulary and an academic concept that if you're low language, if you're high risk poverty, you don't necessarily know. So using a real world connection at their level.
And we talked about being a police detective too. You have to search through all that text and that data to find a piece of evidence that will prove your case. So the ones that we didn't do well on, or not so well, was the target 6, relate knowledge of text structures. So it was 33% on a multiple select. It was the same one that Diana's class had some struggle with. And then target 2, that central idea again, but it's question type. It was hot text. We had 10% understand the hot text question. So my goals are that we would increase from 33% to 70% in their ability to relate knowledge of text structures in a multiple select question by January 13th. And then those are my kiddos down there that we're going to focus on to meet that 70%.
And you're gonna use multiple data points, check-ins, CAs, and exit tasks.
Correct. And then my second goal will increase from 10% to 60% in their ability to identify that central idea within that hot text question. I didn't set it at 70 because if I looked at the kiddos who I thought I could move, we weren't quite there, so I set it at 60. Hopefully we'll go above that.
And I see you have 19 on that goal, yeah.
Yeah. And so some of the things that I thought we would try this time is that cooperative group jigsaw. And so I'm going to make a longer paragraph and we're going to cut it into sentences. And then in groups, they would decide if that sentence then supported the inference or the conclusion or the central idea, whatever we focused on. And then they would have to come together with the next group and they'd have a discussion. Do they think that both of these sentences, do they not, do they? And so then we would all eventually at the end come together as one big group to see which of our sentences helped support. Because it gets them up and moving, it gets them talking instead of just sitting and working on a piece of paper.
So cooperative grouping, definitely a high yield strategy. And the jigsaw itself is an activity, but inherent in that activity is narrowing the focus, right? That's what jigsaw does, is it's taking this huge body and making it manageable in pieces to kind of build.
And then also continue with some more graphic organizers. I don't think I have been as diligent and good with the graphic organizers as Diana and Shannon have, so I'm going to make that a focus for me. And within those text structures. So I know one of the questions too was about dialogue. What is the purpose of dialogue within a selection? So really just using that graphic organizer, you know, what is dialogue? What is its purpose? And then also reviewing those strategies for multiple select question types within all the target areas. So as we continue to go through week by week in the targets, so it'd be once a week, we would say, how does a multiple select question look within this target? How does it look within this target? Because they'll know that that's one of our goals, that we're working on focusing on a multiple select question.
And how will you communicate the goals and progress?
Through exit tasks. partner feedback, so we've been taking exit tasks also and working within partners afterwards to have a discussion of why did you choose that, why did you think it was that correct answer, and what would you do differently next time.
Okay.
Through our CAs, and then we do comprehension once a week, so that feedback daily on that comprehension question that matches it. And brief rights shouldn't be on there, sorry.
Do you have accountable talk stems for the partner feedback, or are they just at the point now where they've internalized that?
They still use it, we still use justify, challenge, and defend. We also have used, so they have to use text proof, so we have stems that ask them to say, on page it said.
Okay.
The author said on page. I know it's correct because in paragraph 2 it says. So they're asked to use those text stems within their conversations.
And what kind of reflections have you heard? Like, what would you do different next time? Are they
Well, it's-
surface or?
yeah, it's based on the distractor, so they choose the distractor quite often. And so they'll say, well, next time I'll think longer between the 2 answer choices. Or next time I'll use your strategy of, I know the other ones are incorrect, so I'm only trying to decide between 2.
So you've been varying the strategy.
I'm interested in looking at the formatting of your ELA notebooks for the purpose of graphic organizer and I don't know what kind of headings you guys use, so can we talk about that at a later date?
Absolutely.
Okay.
With the distractors, the next day, do you do any kind of whole group, identify similarities and differences so that they're really looking analytically at the distractor versus the correct answer and what makes this a distractor? What are the key elements for them to identify?
So we eventually start having the kids write the assessment items themselves, and that's a scaffolded process, and that's when we really dig into what is a distractor, how do you write a distractor, how do you recognize a distractor? But we haven't.
And I think mine comes through like the proof and disproof. Some of them are really good at finding the text evidence to prove their answer choice, which is a great strategy. Others go about it as the disproof, and then they're like, that's a distractor because it says summer, but the season is autumn, So I think it just kind of goes, right now,
They're building their own strategy as
Yeah.
well, and their own thinking processes.
We've made a public record of, in the past, what makes a good distractor. So then they add to it as we go. So they'll go up and just add, a good distractor uses a negative word in the sentence to help you, to confuse you. So instead of, he didn't walk down the street when he did. So you're having to pay attention to those negative words that go along with it there too. And they just find them and put them up there.
Shannon, thank you, Amy.
Okay, so last month, my goal was to increase from 35% to 75% in students being able to determine the main idea or central idea of a passage, target 2, and at least one supporting detail in a short text item. And we went to 74%, so we missed it by 1%. And then, close. My second goal was for us to increase from 30% to 70% in a hot text item in their ability to choose a supporting detail for a given inference. And we went to 84% and we exceeded by 14% my goal.
Excellent.
So open house, our common assessment, was a CA that I used for the successes that we had, and we had 3 main ones. Again, target 4, they scored 94% on a multiple choice item. On target 2, 94% again on a multiple choice item, and on language usage, target 7, 100%.
Yeah.
I know, that's great.
Yeah.
So when you look across your 3 classrooms, it's pretty fascinating because Amy and Shannon had success with target 4. You all had success with 7, and all with 2. And then Amy mentioned 1, and Diana mentioned 1, and 5. So there was some common, but then you also had little So that's what we're trying to tease out, obviously.
Had we just done figurative language before?
We had,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
it was the week before, yeah. So, for my successes in target 4 and in target 2, I think that my continuing to model my thinking and unpacking the questions and the targets has helped. Specifically with the theme one, we really focused on unpacking theme not just with lesson or moral, but connecting it to the problem solution in a text, because they often don't go through the beginning, middle, end to come up with really what the theme is. And I think making that connection, problem solution, really helped with being able to identify themes. We also used a tally strategy because our answer choices have been very close. So there's been one good and there's been one that's better. And so we went through the text and kind of dissected sentence by sentence or paragraph by paragraph, stopped and asked ourselves, does that sentence or paragraph support answer A? And if it did, tally mark. Or did it support B? Tally mark. And so there was a visual way of them being able to see which one had more tally marks. And it really helped because they were picking the distractor 50% or more of the time.
And you did that as a class.
As a class, and they did it, then they transferred into their small group cooperative practice, they did, yeah.
So do you think it was really that they had that visual, or did that visual, initiating that visual also make them stop and pay more attention to what they were reading?
I think both, yeah. I think the visual helped them in their confidence in picking the right answer choice, but because it was a visual with tally marks, they were forced to stop and look more closely at each paragraph.
I also wonder, sometimes when the text is so long, they forget from the beginning. They may have use a detail to prove at the beginning, but when they're near the end, they don't even remember that. So this kind of just helps them tally.
Yeah. And I also think our graphic organizer that's on our GLAD process grid in our class that they use as a reference really helps them a lot because they're able to see the graphic image that we use to organize our thinking. I think that helped with the theme. I think that my partner group time and small group instruction with providing corrective feedback helped with all 3 targets successes.
So talk about your partner practice.
So the partner practice has been in the context of like an AB deep dyad. And so students have I don't think I mentioned it in this plan, but I think I did for my goals for my next one. But we continue to use where they have some private think time to answer a question, then they come together with a partner, they discuss what answer choice they picked and they justify it. And there's a protocol that I have put in place for that. And then at the goal setting, I stole that idea from Diana hugely.